Harry's wife. Plenty of spare books. Lone reader queues for Prince Harry's release of Spare. An article by Catherine Luff tells us that staff at London bookshops were surprised when the expected onrush of buyers failed to appear. Well, this is interesting because on the one hand, we're being told that Spare has set a new record for sales of a non-fiction book, although the category that it's placed in is questionable because there does appear to be some fiction amongst it all, selling some 400,000 copies. Yet, as I look at this article from The Telegraph, there's somebody called Caroline Lennon who wasn't stood in a queue, and she stood at Waterstones Piccadilly holding a copy of her purchase with a lot of the press around her. The article tells us it's one of the most hotly anticipated memoirs of the year, yet on Tuesday morning, when copies of Prince Harry's book Spare finally went on sale in London, sparse queues suggested something of an anticlimax. Well, in a way, is that any surprise, given that Harry's wife determined that it should be leaked, in inverted commas, in Spain, so she, in essence, stole the thunder of her own husband's book. While many London bookshops opened early to accommodate eager crowds, reminiscent of another Harry's debut back in the 1990s, staff were surprised when the expected onrush of buyers failed to appear. One woman told BBC Radio 4, I thought there'd be a queue around the block, but I've turned up at 6 a.m. and there's no one here. I'm on my own. Caroline Lennon, 59, said, I'm here because I like Harry, and I like Harry and Harry's wife, and I don't care what anybody says about me. Waiting outside Waterstones Piccadilly, she told the Daily Mail, my personal feeling with Harry and William is they should connect. There's no love between them. There's no love with that family. He and William need to get their heads together and make up, for God's sake. Life is too short. Well, you're perfectly entitled to your opinion, Caroline, although it's not really formulated on the sturdiest of grounds, it must be said. And she carries on, I don't care what anybody says. People will criticise me and say, what an idiot for liking Harry. What an idiot for queuing up. But I don't care what anyone says, she added. A trickle of further customers followed, including James Bradley, 61, from Hammersmith, the third person to buy the book in Piccadilly. Just 3 people bought the book during the first hour of opening. He said he felt there'd be limited damage to the royal family from the book. Entertainingly, there's a tweet from somebody called Bert's Books, and they have a display in their window which shows 4 copies of Spare, and around it 3 copies of something called How to Kill Your Family. So they're quite clear in their views about Prince Harry. The article continues, we've had decades of this, it's fine, it's just more of the same. They just have to shrug it off and carry on being the royal family, he said. After the Queen's death, the royal family's stock has never been higher in my lifetime, and this will just bounce off. In 6 months' time, we won't be talking about this. It's a good distraction from strikes and all the problems we're having this horrible winter. It's a bit of light entertainment. Only a small crowd could be seen outside W.H. Smith in Victoria Station, central London, when it opened at midnight for buyers to get their hands on their first copies. Spare queues could partly be attributed to much of the book's most controversial moments having been leaked after it mistakenly went on sale in Spain before its official publication date. The book's revelations have included that the prince took illegal drugs as a young man, an account of how he lost his virginity, recollections of an alleged physical attack by his brother, the Prince of Wales, and poignantly details of the impact his mother's death had upon him as a child, and how he believed for years she was really living in hiding. The first customers at Victoria were handed copies as photographers captured the moment before staff started putting half-price stickers onto copies and stacking them on specially designed shelving units near the front of the shop. Waiting outside the shop, bartender Sasha Purcell, 27, who has moved to London from Melbourne, Australia, said, G'day, I'm just intrigued. I've heard so much press about the book, and it's also just a bit exciting. I've never been to a midnight release. Asked about the criticism surrounding the book, she said, yeah, it can be seen as a betrayal made to the royal family, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of lies have been spewed about him. It can go both ways. I don't think any of the party is in the right or the wrong. G'day. Sarah Nakana, 46, a surveyor from Dulwich, southeast London, said she had already downloaded the audiobook as she picked up a copy, saying she wanted to try to get ahead of the British press and their narratives. While in-person queues were lower than expected, it is anticipated that online sales of the book will do well. The Kindle edition was number 4 on the Amazon UK charts on the day of its release. So, what's going on? If 400,000 copies have purportedly been sold, but the press haven't been able to find many people purchasing it and there are not queues around the block, what's going on? Well, we asked this lady, who we found with a great big truck out of the back of Waterstones, and asked her who she was, as we noticed that there were several thousand copies of Spare being forklift trucked into a huge articulated lorry that she was driving. Excuse me, madam, you seem to have a lot of copies of Spare. Yeah, hello, yes I have. This is my real voice, by the way. Yes, sure. What's your name? Olivia Winfrey. Okay, I see. And what do you propose to do with all of these books? I'm going to read them all because it's such a fascinating story. But why do you need so many copies of this book? Got to go. Too difficult question. What? Well, that was all we were able to glean from that particular lady, Olivia Winfrey, apparently, although she did have a striking resemblance, it has to be said, to Oprah Winfrey, notwithstanding the blonde wig that she was wearing. What do people below the line think about all of this? Do they have any views about the sales that are taking place? What are their observations about it all? Well, there's plenty of them. At the time of recording this for you, there's 1,666 videos. And the first comment that comes up is Alf Resco. Staff at London bookshops were surprised. Well, they must have been the only folk in the country that were. Robert Young. What do you do with spare copies of Spare? Pulp Fiction. J.C. Clark. On a point of order, how can one person be a Q? Good point. Oliver's Army. Harry Pothead and the Half-Price Whinge. Very good. Perineum. I believe they're planning to change the title to generate some interest. Confessions of a Vacuous Pillock is a possible contender. Christopher Carver. He wants a style of living that only money can buy, so it has come to this. Compare this with what Japanese princess who married a commoner and has vanished from sight doing a normal job earning her way. Which one do you respect? Joe Pendlebury. As a bookseller, I determined some time ago never to allow this title to pass through our hands. Piggy Malone. No, Robert Young. So the earlier headlines were total rubbish, as I suspected. There was no rush for this piece of trash, perhaps the biggest book launch flop of all time. Robert's story, his betrayal of his close family was all about generating book sales. He's a real piece of work. I don't care whether any of this is true. He's a disgrace, and I can't imagine why anyone would buy the thing. Harry Flashman. Remember, if you download it on Kindle, it'll forever be on your Amazon order history. What if that is ever leaked? David Simon. Kind of heartwarming to know that Harry and Harry's wife's one supporter turned up to show solidarity, something for their PR agent to spin up. Samuel Porteous. But she's not a woman of colour, so it doesn't count. Scathing remarks as usual. Nobody buying it in terms of that Harry is doing a good thing. If the sales are there, then there's plenty of people who are interested. Some of it may be more of a hate read, so to speak, but it isn't making him popular. Sure, he's making his money, and at the moment he won't care about that because he thinks that he's justified in what he's doing. But when he wakes up, and he will, the full horror of what he's done will smack him right between his closely set eyes. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.